Let me read out some of the questions people have posted in the chat. I don't know whether people who ask these questions are still here. So one question is training is supervised, testing is unsupervised learning. I think that question is not correct because we use testing in supervised learning. So in the after supervised learning, you do the testing. So the process is still called supervised learning, but testing is an activity you perform after you do the training, so that you understand whether it has learned correctly. Right? So whether it is regression or classification, the training is supervised. You have the output value of the output variable, and after it has learned the model. So the learning phase, you just learn the model, and in the testing phase, you just check whether it has learned correctly. So it's not correct to say that testing is unsupervised. It's all part of the supervised learning process. Another question is when data is said to be overfitting, testing data is compared with validation data or training data. See, overfitting is a property which results from the fitting of the model. It's not easy to find out whether it has overfitted or not. Of course, if you have new data points, you can find out whether there is overfitting. If it doesn't, if the prediction errors are large, then we can say that there is overfitting. But we find it out. Yeah, you can also compare with validation data and see if there is overfitting. So I think it is correct. You can either use validation data or testing data to find out whether there is overfitting, but not training data. With training data, it will fit the model. You won't know whether there is any overfitting. With some unseen data, whether from the validation data or test data, we can check whether there is overfitting. The next question is whether the steps in learning are common for any problem, whether it is classification. Yes, for classification and regression, both are supervised learning method. So the procedures are almost the same. So you have the training data, then you have the validation data, they have test data. There's the kind of metrics you calculate for checking the accuracy of learning. All this is exactly the same. So the steps, I would say, are exactly the same. Okay, another general question. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are the same or different domain? It's an interesting question. So if you search, what is the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning on Google, you can find a lot of things. What I think is artificial intelligence is a more general term. It involves a lot of other things. People who work on artificial intelligence also work on brain, then on the neurobiology. So there are a lot of things which people are doing in artificial intelligence. Machine learning is a more narrow area within artificial intelligence. There is a lot more in artificial intelligence and psychology. There are a lot of things that are taking place in artificial intelligence research. Machine learning is more specific, the kind of things which we are looking at in this workshop. That is more machine learning. You can say it is a subset of artificial intelligence. How an engineer without knowing programming can contribute. There are some tools which are very easy to use. You don't, without knowing programming, you prepare the data, you can train it, you can use some visual interfaces, and you can apply machine learning. But some of the tools that we use today, like MATLAB or Python, require some knowledge of programming. But there are a lot of things which you can also do. If you understand the algorithm, you can just implement yourself in Excel. I'll show you one example later on. Just a minute. Okay, right. So these are some of the questions you have posted. Is there any generic formula for calculating data size? Data size. So in statistics, there are some papers which say it should be 10 times the number of variables. So that is, but you cannot apply it to machine learning, because if you take some example like the image recognition, the number of variables is huge. Even if you have 100 pixel by 100 pixel, you have 10,000 variables. So now if you use the statistics formula, 10,000 times 10, you need 100,000 images to learn something. So it's not practical. So in statistics, there are some the guidelines on the data size, but in general, we don't have any such. Yeah, another question, can machine learning can be used for building design? Yes, design is one of the engineering activities which where we can use machine learning. So this is one of the oldest application of machine learning, I would say. People first applied machine learning to the design problems before they even realized the potential for applying it to uh, other kinds of problems like monitoring, sensing, diagnosis, and so on. Okay, so let me continue. We will. Okay, so what we did in the last exercise, we tried to identify some rules and whether we can apply, we can store these rules in an expert system and then use it for the safe operation of a tower train. So this is something, where some of you have written it in the form of rules, others have written more generic description. But that gives you some idea about how difficult it is to write rules in this form. But this is one of the technique that has been proposed from the beginning. Now, the next thing is people looked at this idea called case-based reasoning. So after people realize the difficulties with rule-based expert systems, the main difficulty, let me repeat, the main difficulty is to get rules that are precise and generally applicable. That is the first thing. Second is to maintain the rule base such that it works all the time. We have saw the problem of brittleness. You add a new rule which conflicts with the existing rule and everything goes haywire. It's very difficult to get this kind of system of rules to work correctly. So because of these problems, people started losing interest in rule-based expert system. And that was the time when case-based reasoning becoming popular. So the argument was that experts have difficulty in telling you the rules which are general enough and precise enough that you can store in a system and make decisions based on that. But experts have no difficulty in telling stories about what they have done in the past, whether it is design or diagnosis. They can easily tell, yes, I did this building and or that bridge 10 years ago, it was in these conditions. So they are able to easily give you cases. And then the idea is that we store all the cases in a case base instead of rules in a form which is much more easier to operate than the rules. So we create a case base, and when you get a new problem, you look up the past cases. You get a new, say you have designed a bridge of, let's say, 30-meter span. And in a new case, you get, in a new problem, you get a bridge of, let's say, 40-meter span. So you look into the case base and you see, yes, this is the design I did for my previous bridge. So you look at what was done in that and use that as a ballpark solution and make small modifications to account for the differences, and you get a new solution. So the cases are used to store experiences of the past and for providing solutions in the future. So this is the idea of a case-based reasoning system. And K nearest neighbor, which Aparna presented this morning, it is a variation of case-based reasoning. In case-based reasoning, when you get a new problem, you identify what is the most similar case using a similarity metric, some distance metric. You calculate what is the difference between the new problem and the old problem and find out the case which is most similar. And that is used to propose a new solution. Whereas in K nearest neighbor, we select K nearest solutions. So using a distance metric, you find out what are the nearest solutions to the new problem. And based on some scheme, some voting or some other method, you decide on what should be how the solution should be modified and what solution should be adopted. So that is the idea of K nearest neighbor. So to do this, I have another exercise. You can try this. Here I have the same example, tower crane, but now I'm not asking you to write down rules for the safe operation of the tower crane. So it's not the rule-based expert system, but we have a set of actions we have done in the past, which you store in the form of a database. You say for the wind speed, 40 kilometer, 30 kilometer, 100 kilometers. So you have different wind speed, whether there is rain, yes, no. You have different conditions and the action which has been taken. So this is your case base. And then for a new situation, we want to take an action. So you look at what is the closest you have encountered in the past, and then you take an action. So this is a small exercise in case-based reasoning. You can come to that, the next exercise on case-based reasoning. This is the same data. The question is, what action should be taken when it is raining and the wind speed is 80 kilometer per hour? So looking at this data, you find out what should be taken. So here we are not giving any rules, but we are using past cases to guide the decision.
Sir, here the option 2 is stop the crane, right? I think the option is not tagged against the
Oh,
option number.
sorry, I think that's a mistake. Okay, so the option 2 is stop the crane. Sorry, it's a mistake. I don't know how this happened. It's not, the option 2 is stop the crane. Yeah, simple exercise. So a lot of you have responded already. So let us look at the answers. Yeah, stop the crane is 80 kilometer per hour. So we can look at the data and see what is the closest. So now you have two variables. So this is a typical situation. All the variables are not numeric variables. So you also have symbolic variable, yes, no kind of variables. You can convert it into binary variable. So you need to have some distance metric to compare the two variables. So here our wind speed is 80 kilometer per hour. It is raining, so it is not an exact match. But looking at the data, most of you have guessed that we have to stop the crane. So you see, if it is 80, if it is 100, you stop the crane. You operate the crane only when the wind speed is very less. So it is based on so it's based on past data. Okay, so that is a small exercise in getting to know how a case-based reasoning system or k-nearest neighbor method works. Let us move on. So what we saw earlier was in rote learning, there is no generalization. Raw data is stored in the form they are. You don't generalize. The raw data is made use of in decision making. We don't form a general model to use it for future prediction or decision making. Now in statistical learning, that is the difference. We don't keep the raw data points anymore. After learning, we only keep the model. We don't use the raw data points anymore. You discard it and use the model for decision making. So in statistical learning, we develop a generalization using the training set typically by updating model parameters. Simple equation. So we saw the example of regression. So there are more complex methods. It's not, we saw the idea of a hypothesis space. You can have different types of hypothesis. Numerical functions are just one type of hypothesis. There are many other possibilities. So these are some of the learning tasks. You can use it for regression, classification, clustering, both for supervised as well as unsupervised learning. The number of tasks are there. Now we look at the algorithms or techniques. So in general, let me tell you that all the machine learning, statistical machine learning problems are optimization problems. You have some objective function which you want to minimize or maximize. Those who have taken courses on optimization will know. First, you need to define an optimization problem. The first step is decide what are the optimization variables, decision variables. And you want to find out optimal values for this decision variable that minimizes or maximizes an objective function. So you need to define that objective function in terms of the decision variables. So that is the mathematical optimization. And there are mathematical method. The simplest method which all of you have learned in school is taking the derivative, setting the derivative to 0. But we cannot use it for many problems for many reasons. I'll explain that later. So we use heuristic optimization. People have used genetic algorithm, particle swarm optimization, ant colony optimization. There are a lot of different kinds of optimization algorithms. You may not know there is one algorithm called PGSL, Probabilistic Global Search Losan. This is an algorithm, optimization algorithm, which I have developed. A lot of people are using it. It's not as popular as genetic algorithm, but still a lot of people have used it. So if you come across some interesting optimization problem, you can look at my website. You can download the code and you can use this for your solving your optimization problem. So there are many optimization algorithms. Finally, everything is an optimization problem from for a machine learning, statistical machine learning application. We will see this in more detail. And then there are other techniques like artificial neural network. They also do optimization. Again, it uses some heuristics. We will see that in a short while. Support vector machine. Again, they use optimization. So these are some examples. These are not mutually exclusive set of techniques. So we come to regression in more detail. This is the simplest way of learning. This is not, you cannot even call it as machine learning. It's a statistical technique. And people have been using it even before machine learning became popular. But I'm going into a bit detail of this because this forms the basics. And a lot of the concepts are the same, whether you use more sophisticated machine learning techniques uh, or very simple ones, the concepts are very similar. So I'm going to discuss this in more detail. Some of you are already familiar with all this, but there might be a few others. I need to explain that to them. Only then you understand the more complex algorithms. So you take a simple example. You have two variables, x1, x2, and you have an output variable y, and you want to find the relationship between x1, x2, and y. This is similar to what you did earlier in the first initial exercise, but here you have two variables. That's only a difference. So now you can just look at it and you have already done the other exercise, so you can easily find out this relationship. You will see that y is equal to x1 plus x2, right? It satisfies all the data points. In general, we may not be able to find an equation which satisfies all the data points exactly. That's why you have this optimization problem. So this is more like a curve fitting problem where you want to fit a curve through all the data points and there is a solution. So in general, we want to learn a relationship. If it is two variable, you want to learn a relationship of this form, y equal to some coefficient multiplied by x1 plus coefficient multiplied by x2 plus a bias term. We call it as a bias term for some reason. I'll explain that later. You want to find this relationship, but you don't know what is A1, what is A2, and what is B. For this particular example, you know that A1 is equal to 1, A2 is equal to 1, B is equal to 0, because it fits all the data. But in general, how do you find out the coefficients A1, A2, and B? That is the regression problem. You want to find out a relationship. Here you have a set of model parameters, A1, A2, and B, and you want to find the value such that it matches the data as closely as possible. So this is the standard linear regression problem. Is the simplest form of learning. So we will use simple mathematical notation, which we'll see in when you see read literature, especially on support vector machine. This is the notation that is used in the literature. Is very simple. So I'm just explain. So you want to write a function y, which is the output variable, as a function of all the input variable, but now we are writing it in the vector notation. So X is a vector containing all the variables x1, x2, and so on. And W is another vector consisting of the coefficients. Earlier we used A1, A2, but let us call it as W1, W2, and so on. And we put this in angle bracket as a particular mathematical notation which denotes a dot product. You take the transpose of the first and then take the matrix product with the second. So this angle bracket simply means W1, X1. You take the corresponding elements in each of the matrices and multiply and you add, which is nothing but the dot product of a row vector, a row matrix, and a column matrix, right? So this is a simple notation. It's a short form for writing summation W1 X1 plus B. So we will use this notation later on when we talk about support vector machine also. This is the notation that's going to be used. So you need to get familiar with this notation. You just put it in angle bracket. So W is a vector of coefficients, which are unknown, which you want to determine. X is a vector consisting of the input variables. So for each data point, we know these values. And the term B is called the bias. I'll explain when I talk about the artificial neural network, why it is called the bias. So the function Wx plus B represents a hyperplane in n dimensions. In the case of one dimension, when you have one input variable, one output variable, the equation is a straight line. In n dimension, this represents a hyperplane. In 2 dimension, it is a plane which you are familiar with. In n dimension, it is a hyperplane. In 2 dimension, it looks something like this. You have a set of data points and you want to find a straight line which passes through all the data points as much as possible. So this is the straight line in n dimension. This is a hyperplane. The vector W defines a direction perpendicular to the hyperplane. This becomes evident if you take the derivative with respect to each of these variables. So if you take, this is the equation f of x, y equal to wx plus b. You take the derivative delta y by delta x1. You get w1. If you expand it, it becomes clear. We are not going to do it here, but you just try it. Delta y by delta x1, you get w1. Delta y by delta x2, you get w2, and so on. So this vector w consists of the partial derivative with respect to each variable. So if you have the vector containing all the partial derivatives, that is nothing but the gradient. Gradient of a function is the direction in which you have the maximum slope. So this W vector is nothing but the gradient vector. It is the normal to the hyperplane. This concept is important later on when we talk about classification problem. This concept, this geometric interpretation is important. That's why I'm spending some time on this. So this vector W defines a direction perpendicular to the hyperplane, which contains all the data points. And varying the B means you are translating it. The slope of the hyperplane does not change. You're just moving it parallel to itself. So that is the geometric interpretation. So B results in translation of the hyperplane, and W is the slope of the hyperplane. Okay, that's the geometric interpretation. We'll come back to this when we talk about classification. Now the optimization problem itself. There are many ways in which you can formulate the optimization problem. This is the most common method, least squares approach. What we do is you take the square of the error. And what exactly is the error? Error is the difference between what is predicted by the model and the actual value. So you have, let us say we have L data points. You have L data points for which we know the output value of the output variable Y. So we denote it as Yi, which are the output variable for each of the data points. And now, if you look at some arbitrary value for W1, W2, and so on, you see what is predicted by the model. If you take Wx plus B, this is the predicted value by the model. This is the value, which is the actual value in the data set. And this is what is predicted by the model. This is Yp. Let's call it as the Yp, that's the predicted value. The distance, the difference between the two, that is the error in the prediction. In a regression problem, the model predicts a value according to this equation, Wx plus B, and the actual value is known. You find the difference. That is the error. You take the square of the error. This is the objective function you want to minimize. You want the error to be as minimum as possible by changing the value for W, for the coefficient W1, W2, and W3, and so on. We want to find out which is the combination of W which gives the minimum error with respect to all the data points. So this is our objective function, least squares objective function. You also call it as the loss function. So this is the least square loss function which you want to minimize. Now, how do you minimize? This is the optimization variables are W1, W2, W3, and so on. And you want to find out the best combination of values which give the minimum value for the objective function. So this is the optimization problem. We have defined the optimization variable. We have defined the objective function. Now, how do you find the optimal value? We use the simplest technique which you learned in calculus. You take the derivative with respect to each of the optimization variable, W1, W2, and so on. We are not going to derive it here, but I'm just telling you the principle how you do it. You take the partial derivative with respect to each optimization variable. We know from calculus that the derivative has to become 0. So you get, if you have n variables, you get n equations. And finally, what you get is a set of equations in this form. I'll explain this. There is a little bit of mathematics. Most of you said you want to know mathematics, so I'm going to explain this. So you can write down your original set of data points in this form, in matrix form. Y equal to X multiplied by W plus E, where is the error. So if you look at each data point, so this is a matrix containing, let's say if you have L data points, you have L rows in on this left hand side, and X matrix is the matrix containing all the values. So you take the product of matrix multiplication of this X matrix with W. You get the predicted value. The predicted value won't be exactly equal to the actual value in your data set. That's why you have an error. So in each data point, you have some error. And then we want to minimize this error. That's why we created the optimization problem. And finally, after setting the derivative to 0, this is the equation you get. X transpose X multiplied by the W equal to X transpose Y. So this is, let us examine this. So this is the X matrix which contains all the data points, input data points, value of the input variables. You take the transpose of the data matrix, multiply by itself. So you get X transpose X. You can verify if there are n input variables, you get an n by n matrix. And W is the set, is the vector variables which you want to calculate. It is a row, it's a column matrix having n rows. So you get a set of linear simultaneous equations in n variables. So here we have the coefficient matrix X transpose X multiplied by the matrix containing all the unknown variables. And on the right hand side, again, you will see that when you multiply, you get n rows and one column. So you have a column matrix. So this is nothing but a set of linear simultaneous equations. So if you solve this, you get the value for the weight factors, which gives the minimum error in the prediction. Maybe it is a bit difficult for some of you. So I have an Excel sheet where I have compiled this. It becomes easy to understand. Are you able to see my Excel sheet clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I take taken a simple example with two variables. I think it's the same. No, it's a different example. So you have x1 and x2. These are my variables, input variables. And I have my output variable, which is y. I have set of values for the input variables, x1 equal to 1, x2 equal to 0. So I have, so this is my x matrix. And this is my right hand side y matrix. Now what I have done is I created a dummy variable having a value of 1 for all the data points to represent the bias term. So you can treat even the bias term also uniformly. You can incorporate the bias term also into your weight matrix. So I have this. So if I write the weight matrix as W1, W2, and B. So now you can see if you multiply this matrix using the rules of matrix multiplication, if you multiply the row by this column, so you get W1 X1 plus W2 X2 plus 1 times B. So you get W1 X1 plus W2 times X2 plus B. That is what is predicted by this model. And on the right hand side, we have the actual value for each data point, 1, 1, 0, 1, and so on. So this is that matrix X multiplied by W, you get the Y. Now, with the equation we ended up with X transpose X multiplied by W equal to the X transpose Y. So what I have done is I have multiplied this matrix. This is my X matrix. I take the transpose and I multiply by itself. In Excel, you can easily do it using the mmult function. There is a function transpose. You take a transpose of a matrix and you can use the mmult function to multiply it with itself. I want, so some of you may not know Excel that well, but I'm just telling you how I have done it. So you can take the same matrix, take the transpose, multiply by itself. So this is X transpose multiplied by X, which is the coefficient matrix. So let me come back to that equation. So this is this X transpose multiplied by X multiplied by W, which is the weight vector, is equal to the right hand side X transpose multiplied by Y. So here I do the same thing. I take the transpose of X multiplied by Y. So this represents the set of linear simultaneous equations. So this is the set of coefficients and these are the variables W1, W2 and B. So if you solve this set of simultaneous equation, you get the value for W1, W2 and B. So a simple way you can do it is by taking the inverse of this matrix. Take the inverse of this matrix X transpose multiplied by X. So this in Excel, there is this function M inverse. So I've used that function M inverse multiplied by M inverse multiplied by the right hand side, you get the weight matrix. So the optimal weights is W1 equal to 0.5, W1, W2 equal to 0.5, and the bias value equal to 0.25. This is what you get from the linear regression formula. Now using these values for W, you can substitute here. You multiply X matrix with W. So you get what is predicted. So you don't get exactly one. So this is a problem where you don't get an exact match. So the predicted value is 0.75. For the second data point at 0.75, again, there is a difference between what is predicted with what is the actual value in the data set. Instead of getting 0, the predicted value becomes 0.25. And for the last data point, you get 1.25. So you can actually compute what is the error in each of these data point, what is predicted minus what is the actual. I copy this. So you can see that you get a negative error in some data point, you get positive error in some data points. Overall, the errors match. This is a property of linear regression. You take the sum of the errors, it becomes 0. So the errors are perfectly balanced across all the data points. And that's how it is able to minimize the error. So if you take the square loss function, that is the minimum with these weight factors 0.5, 0.5, and 0.25. So this is how you do least squares regression. This is something you can easily do in Excel. If you know how to multiply matrices and take the inverse of matrices, you can easily implement it, and you can do it for any number of variables. Okay, so we'll do this exercise. This is an exercise to just to refresh your knowledge of what I described just now. It's a small quiz. In the least squares optimization problem for linear regression involving n input variables and one output variable, how many optimization variables are there? It's a small quiz to understand, to find out whether you have understood the problem. And the next one, again, I don't know what happened to all the options. The forms have got corrupted. Doesn't matter. So there is one question here. What happens when the covariance matrix of data becomes singular in the case of ordinary? So I need to explain this why. What is this covariance matrix? So let me come back to this. So let us try to understand what are these terms here. The term X transpose multiplied by X, where X is the data matrix. This represents the covariance of data. You saw it as n by n, where n is the number of variables. So it is a square matrix having n rows and n columns. This represents the covariance matrix in the case where data is centered. That is, if you take each column represents a variable in your data, and you find the mean of the column, mean value for the variable, and you subtract each data point from the mean. That's how you center it. So all the mean becomes 0. So if you center it and you take X transpose multiplied by X, this matrix, the product you get from this, that represents the covariance of the data, covariance matrix of the data. And what exactly is this covariance matrix? Along the diagonal, all the elements are nothing but the variance, that is square of the standard deviation. So you get the variance along the diagonal of this covariance matrix, and all the non-diagonal terms represent the correlation between, actually the square, the correlation between the variables. So that is the covariance matrix. So this X transpose multiplied by X, that the coefficient matrix for the linear simultaneous equation, that represents the covariance of the data matrix. So the question is, what happens when the covariance of the data becomes singular? That is, the determinant becomes zero in the case of ordinary least squares regression. What happens? So this is something you have to think and answer. We already had some clues earlier. I had mentioned this before, but you can answer this. Take 2-3 minutes, and because we need to move quickly, so you can complete it fast. Ignore the last one. There was some error, and I don't know what happened. There is some something has happened to the form. Ignore the last one. Answer only these two questions. Okay, so let me look at your responses. So somebody has said there is only one variable. We have n input variables and one output variable. Answer is not correct. So we have in our optimization problem, the variables are W1, W2, W3, and so on. For each input variable, we want to know what is the coefficient in the linear relationship y equal to W1 x1 plus W2 x2 and so on. So it is not 1 definitely. So now the question is whether it is n or n plus 1. The actual answer is n plus 1 because we also have the bias term, because the general form of the equation is wx plus b, that is w1 x1 plus w2 x2. For each input variable, we have an unknown coefficient. So we have n such unknown coefficient, plus you have the bias term b. So answer is n plus 1. Okay. For most of the exercises, there is no correct answer or wrong answer, but for this one, there is only one answer. Answer is n plus 1. Okay. Okay, what happens when the covariance matrix becomes singular in the ordinary least square? So let me see what you have understood. So many people said no idea. So that means, I need to explain this again. Say that no, it is not possible. Actually, it is possible. It can become singular. Regression fails. My question is why it fails. Yeah, some frequent correlation matrix is singular. So some of you have understood. So I need to explain this again. This was a short quiz to understand what you had understood about linear regression. So let me come back to this. So the solution to the optimization problem is obtained by solving this set of linear simultaneous equations. So you have a coefficient matrix here, n by n matrix, and you have n plus n unknown variables. So I'm assuming that this n also includes the bias term. So you have n coefficients to be determined from n simultaneous equations. Now, the way we do it is you calculate W by taking the inverse of this matrix. If you multiply the both sides by the inverse of this coefficient matrix, you get the value for W. So you are taking the inverse of this matrix and you multiply both sides by the inverse. So if you if you find that the inverse, the determinant is 0, that is the matrix is singular, we will not be able to compute the inverse. The inverse does not exist. So we will not be able to uniquely determine the coefficients W. The matrix is singular. Regression fails. Regression fails because the matrix cannot be inverted, right? So this is the problem we discussed earlier. The matrix becomes singular, regression fails. We are not able to find the values for W. Now, why does this happen? So we can again look again at what is this matrix. So the coefficient, the covariance matrix is singular. If the covariance matrix is singular, you will see that if you do this eigenvalue analysis, some of the eigenvalues become 0. As mentioned earlier, when I talked about principal component analysis, eigenvalues represent the variance in data. So if the eigenvalue is 0, that means certain variances are 0. That means you don't have certain directions. You don't have any data points in certain direction. So when you plot the principal components, you will see that there are some directions in which there is some variation. Data is collinear, and certain other direction, perpendicular direction, there is absolutely no variance in data. That's when the covariance matrix becomes singular and the regression fails in such cases.
Sir, but in the class, we were taught that the solution for this equation always exists.
Tell me again, in the class, what did I say?
In the class, we was like I had a linear algebra course. There we were told that for this equation, the solution always exists. I was told this.
Solution does not exist.
Solution always exists, whatever the case be.
Yeah, no, solution exists because for an equation of this form, when the matrix becomes singular, the solution, there can be infinite number of solutions because the variables are not independent. So you can, for these type of the situations where the matrix becomes singular, you can eliminate one variable. You can arbitrarily choose the value of one variable and you can write down the rest of the equation. You can solve the rest of the equations and find. So it is not that solution does not exist. There are infinite number of solutions. So
So I think the
Sir, you're
audience
not
got
audible,
muted,
sir.
sir.
So you're not audible.
That's happening many times.
choose the weight factors.
So we lost last 2-3 minutes. We could not hear you.
Right. I see that, there is there is an error message. But now is it, are you able to hear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now clear.
Can somebody explain what I was talking before there was connection failure?
So you were talking about there can be multiple solutions. There can be n number of solutions.
Right. There can be infinite number of solutions. So the matrix is singular means that the solutions are not uniquely determined. So you can have, you can arbitrarily choose the value of one variable and write down all the other equations in terms of this variable. Okay. So the correct description is the solution is not uniquely determined. So regression fails because you cannot invert the matrix.
So,
Yeah.
sir, the solution we get, then what does that represent, sir? Still, we will get a solution, right? So, what will that represent?
Right. So so this is exactly what happens when you use something like neural network. It will find one of the solutions. It's not uniquely determined. It is one of the many possible solutions. There is no single solution which minimizes the objective function. So you're getting an arbitrary solution. right? You get the problem is not fully defined. There are many possible solutions. You are finding one of the many possible solutions. We're connecting the output variable to the input variable.
Sir,
Right?
I
Let me
have,
just
sir,
yeah.
I have one question. You
Yeah.
want to say that solution will not
So
exist?
some serious issues, sir, from your side.
Sir, you want to say that there will not exist solution if x transpose x is singular or x is singular.
Yeah, when X transpose X, that is the covariance matrix is singular, when the determinant is 0, we cannot invert it. We cannot solve this.
Yeah. Okay. So again, then we have to find the inverse of x transpose x. in
No,
this.
you cannot find the inverse, because
No. If it is not singular,
yeah,
then
if it's not singular, you find the inverse, multiply the inverse with the right hand side, you straight away get the value for W.
yes, got it.
Okay, any more questions?
Sir, what if x is only singular, like not x transpose
No,
x?
X is not a singular. X is
No,
M pi n matrix. You take X transpose multiplied by X, which represents the covariance matrix when the data is centered. When that is singular, then you have a problem. Regression is not reliable.
yes, sir. My doubt was, what if x is itself singular? Will there be any problem?
X, you cannot find out whether X is singular because not a square matrix.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Let me show that data set. So here you can see, let's say if you take only the, ignore the bias term, you have 2 columns and 4 data points, not a square matrix. It's the data matrix. Now, when you take the transpose of this, multiply by itself, then you get a square matrix, 3 by 3 in this case, because you include the bias term also. So in general, you get an n by n matrix, a square matrix. If this matrix is singular, if you calculate the determinant of this matrix, if it becomes 0, then you cannot calculate the inverse of that. You can try it in Excel. When the determinant is, you try to find the inverse, it will give an error.
Yes, sir. Now we got it.
Sir,
Okay, right. So we will,
Sir,
yeah,
uh,
tell me.
so these are general cases or rare cases, means such type of
I would say in machine learning, these are general cases. General cases, matrix is singular.
so at
Because
the
you have a large number of variables and very few data points. So it becomes multicollinearity becomes the norm when you have a lot of variables and very few data points. But there are situations where we have few variables and large number of data, then the chance of multicollinearity is less. But in most machine learning problems, whether it is gene classification or the image recognition, we end up with a large number of variables. And we have very few data points. That's where we get into this kind of problem.
so in Excel it is giving the error and okay, identified. But in suppose optimization problem is in the loop and suppose it's stuck, then whether it will crash or algorithm
It
will
won't crash, that is the problem. It won't crash. It will give you some answer, but it need not be the correct relation. It is one of the many possible relationships. It will find one of the many possible because it is done iteratively using numerical optimization. It's not making use of the inverse of the matrix. So it will find a solution which might have problem. It may not predict correctly in your new for a new test point.
okay, sir.
Okay, we will just continue for another 3 minutes and then we will stop. Now the next question is how do you handle non-linear relationship? So what we have seen just now is the linear relationship. Y equal to a linear combination of the input variables, x times w. That is a linear relationship, but we saw many examples where the relationship is non-linear. So what do you do in such a case? So if you have these variables x1, x2, x3, and so on, if you want a second degree polynomial, you might write it something like this. If it is the linear relationship, you don't have these non-linear terms, x1 squared, x2 squared, and the product term, you have only these, the last few terms. But in a second degree polynomial, you have x1 squared, x2 squared, x1, x2, and so on. But you can, in theory, you can apply exactly the same technique what you use for linear regression. We take new variables. Instead of the original variables x1 and x2, we also include the terms x1 squared. You can treat this as a new variable, x1 squared, x2 squared, and the product term x1, x2. You can treat these as new variables and do a linear regression exactly in the same form. So you will be able to write it as W1 times this variable plus W2 times this variable and so on. So you get a linear form. We can perform a linear regression exactly the same way you did just now. But the problem is that as you increase the number of the degree of the polynomial, you see more and more terms coming. So you have a lot of unknown variables which you want to determine. And you may not have a lot of data points to determine all these variables. Okay? And as you increase the number of variables, so you have the product term x1, x2. Now, if you have an x3, so you have x1 times x3, x2 times x3. So the number of combination of terms also increase, and you will see that it's almost exponential. The number of terms that you have increases almost exponentially with respect to the number of input variables. So you will need, so if you want to invert the matrix, you will see that you will need lot of data point. Otherwise, the matrix will become singular and you will not be able to invert it. So then practically, we have a difficulty in using higher order polynomials for the regression. So we have that there are better ways of doing it, neural network, kernel method, so on, which I'm going to discuss later on. But to show you, what is the effect of using higher order polynomial, the same example we discussed earlier. So we have 4 data points. If you fit a straight line, it will be like this. Now, what I have done is I carefully selected the data points such that you get a large errors when you fit a polynomial. So you have 2 data points which are very close by, and they differ slightly in the value of the output variable. So if it a second degree polynomial, you get a very strange shape with large errors at points away from the data point. So this is that example which I took earlier. So in general, it's not a good idea to use higher order polynomial for data because you get this kind of spurious relationship. It is artificially fitting a curve to pass through all the data point to minimize the error in all the data point. That doesn't mean that this is the correct relationship. So if you ask me what is better, which is better, this straight line or this polynomial, even though the polynomial might have less error in training, I would say the straight line is better, is a better approximation rather than the higher order polynomial. Okay,
Good.
so I think I will stop here today. We will continue on Monday. Somebody has requested me to continue tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. I have made some other plans. So unfortunately, I'm not able to change my schedule tomorrow. I understand that some of you are working. It's more convenient on a Sunday. I should have thought about it when I planned this workshop, but unfortunately, it is too late to do that now. So we will continue on Monday, but if you have any questions, we can spend a few minutes to answer the questions.
Sir, I want to confirm a fact from you, sir. So what I think, sir, fitting and interpolation are same things. Just the difference is in the degree of the polynomial we choose. Am I correct, sir?
In interpolation, typically we take a set of points and do either linear interpolation or using a higher order polynomial, you can interpolate. But regression is a different thing. You fit an average line or curve which has the minimum error. So the two are different, right? So if you take the same example, if you want to interpolate between these 2 points, you take this point, you take the next point, you fit a straight line and you interpolate the value in between. Whereas in regression, we are trying to find a mean line which passes through all the data points. Did I answer your question?
Sir, my question was regarding fitting and regression, fitting and interpolation, not regression.
Right. Okay. Fitting and fitting and regression. Right. Yeah. In a way, both are similar. But in curve fitting, there are special methods for that. So if you use a spline fitting or something, the process is you take a few points in the neighborhood. You take 2 or 3 points and you try to fit a curve passing through these points, and subject to also some condition that slope has to be continuous and all that. It's a different process. It is in a way similar, but they are two different optimization problems. In curve fitting, we take a few points at a time and try to fit a curve, whereas in regression, we take a large number of points and minimize the error. So mathematically, the two are different, but there is some similarity.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Sir, why are you calling X transpose X as covariance matrix?
No, X transpose X in general is not a covariance matrix. In general, it's not the covariance matrix. Only when the data is centered, it is, if you look at the equation for the covariance matrix, you will see, you take X minus mu, that is the average of the data, and you take the transpose multiplied by X minus mu. So if you look at the definition of the covariance matrix, you will see that if the average is 0, mu is 0, you get exactly the same thing. So X transpose X becomes the covariance matrix when the case where data is centered, when the mean is 0. Right? In general, X transpose X is not the covariance matrix, only in the case of when the data is centered. And then you can make any data, center any data by subtracting from the mean. It's just a translation. You are shifting the origin by exactly the value of the mean of the data. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay, so we stop and we will meet at 9:30 on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Adult.